The Gospel reading for the fifth Sunday after Trinity from Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the sower. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil, and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when troubles or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, and who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. Chapter 13 of Matthew's Gospel describes a key moment in the ministry of Jesus. What better text to welcome us back into church than this one, because it's all about the kingdom of God. Jesus' teaching has met with various reactions, and many people have rejected the message. So now he sets out to explain those reactions. His audience is made up of the disciples and the Pharisees, but there's a great crowd as well, so this teaching is for everyone. In the parable of the sower, Jesus shows why three different sets of people cannot accept his teaching about the kingdom. Only in one group the seed is able to bear fruit and multiply. It's very unusual for Jesus, or perhaps Matthew, to add an explanation, but they do so to ram home the meaning. The people who reject the teaching are the ones who say one thing and do another, those who fail to practice what they preach. Plainly, Matthew had the Pharisees in mind. But their failings are a danger for all the listeners, because it's so easy for people of faith to hear the word and put it on one side for the time being, or as Jesus puts it, to receive the seed and prevent it from bearing fruit. True disciples, he says, are those who hear the word and translate it into practical action, bearing fruit in compassion and service to others, and justice for all. Worst of all, and this was surely in Jesus' mind when he told the story, is to claim to accept the teaching of the kingdom, but to deny it by the way in which we behave. It's a timeless story, but it has wider significance than personal behaviour. It's a warning for the church as well, because the church is called to be a sign of the kingdom. It fulfills that role when it practices the values which are at the heart of Christ's teaching, values which are almost guaranteed to disturb lots of people, just as it disturbed so many of Jesus' hearers all those years ago. It is for us, with the church's guidance, to unpick Jesus' sayings in the light of our world. And when we do, we can see the timeless relevance of the sower. As we look at our world, and indeed at our country at this point in its history, we see deep uncertainty and anxiety, but that is the daily experience of very many people in every age. When I worked at Chichester Cathedral, I was constantly moved by the requests for prayer which were left every day at the shrine of St. Richard, by people who were facing cancer, cot death, broken relationships, abuse, guilt, despair, a son killed in Afghanistan, and much more besides. And all the while, the offering of worship and prayer was going on, as it had every day for many centuries. Prayer for a world as God intended it to be. We cannot escape the fact that life in this world involves suffering of one kind or another. That is why Paul often uses the image of a world striving and longing for redemption. Viewed in this way, Jesus' teaching about the kingdom takes on a new urgency, because if we welcome the word with a good heart, if the seed falls in rich, expectant soil and bears fruit, then we share in what Paul calls the freedom of the children of God. If it's not tasteless to say so, that's what it's all about.